Unless you've been living under a rock for the past decade, then you probably know that Mazda wants to become a more premium car brand. So how does this somewhat recently updated 2021 Mazda CX-9 compare against an actual premium car, like this completely redesigned 2022 Acura MDX? Well, why don't we go for a drive in both and find out. So while most of this 2022 Acura MDX is new, there's one thing that hasn't really changed, and that's the engine. You still get a 3.5 liter naturally aspirated V6 with 290 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque. While it is pretty much the same as the previous generation 3.5 liter V6, it doesn't really need that much changing because it has plenty of get up and go for most people's needs, and it's decently fuel efficient. Currently, I'm averaging about 11.6 liters per 100 kilometers. Officially, the 2022 MDX is rated for 12.6 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. However, for those that do want more power, there will be an Acura MDX Type S with a turbocharged 3-liter V6 that should produce somewhere around 350 horsepower. Paired with this engine is a new 10-speed automatic transmission. For the most part, it does its job very well. Shifts are nice and smooth, and they are relatively quick. The reason why I say relatively quick is because when you're just cruising and you want a burst of power, as soon as you put your foot down, the transmission will react and downshift accordingly. But there is a split-second delay between the time that you put your foot down and the transmission actually getting into the correct gear. But thankfully, it doesn't feel like it's hunting for the correct gear. As soon as it finds it, it sticks with it, and it's always the correct one. If you do want to take over shifting duties with the steering wheel paddle shifters, again, it's the same story. There's a slight hesitancy and delay from the time that you pull it to the time that the transmission actually shifts. But just let the transmission do its own thing and you'll be perfectly happy with it. In the Mazda, you do not get a V6 like how you get in the Acura MDX. Instead, you get a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that can produce up to 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque if you use premium fuel. If you decide to put regular gas in the tank, then it'll produce 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Still a pretty decent amount. However, while it may not have the horsepower of the MDX, the low-end torque of this engine, along with the fact that the CX-9 is lighter than the MDX, so almost about 100 kilograms lighter, the CX-9 actually sets off from a stop a little bit more quickly than the MDX. At least that's how it feels like to me. I'm sure that over a longer distance, say quarter mile or half mile, then the extra horsepower of the MDX would overtake the CX-9. But for everyday city driving, it's that low-end torque that you want, and this feels a little bit more peppy off the line. As for fuel economy in the Mazda CX-9, it is a little bit better than the Acura MDX. Currently, I'm averaging about 11 liters per 100 kilometers. And I have been sticking to mainly city driving with just a little bit of highway driving. So if your commute takes you quite often on highways, then you should be getting slightly better fuel economy numbers than what I'm managing right now. Officially, the Mazda CX-9 is rated for 11.6 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 9.1 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. But of course, the fuel economy would be a little bit better in the CX-9 if it had more gear ratios. This automatic transmission is only a 6-speed, and Mazda has stuck with it for a very long time. However, because of that, they've refined it over and over and over again to the point where it is the best automatic transmission on the market right now. And I've said that before with many of my other Mazda reviews. This transmission shifts very smoothly and very quickly, but unfortunately it's only a 6-speed. So it would be nice to get an additional 2 more gears. However, I'm okay with it. When you take the Mazda CX-9 around a few corners, it's actually not that bad to drive for what it is. I'm not saying that it's going to corner like the MX-5, because I mean this weighs twice as much as the MX-5, but for a 3-row SUV, this is actually quite a lot of fun to drive on winding and twisting roads. However, for the quickest way to get around a corner in a 3-row SUV, it's the Acura MDX that does it best, because that one has super handling all-wheel drive. On a big SUV like this, even with the extra weight that it carries from the previous generation, the SH all-wheel drive system does wonders. The updated system has 40% more rear torque capacity and 30% quicker front-to-rear torque transfer. In other words, it can send more torque to the rear wheels, and it does it more quickly. The rear differential uses torque vectoring to try and rotate the back end of the MDX on corner exit, so that more of the engine's power is used to accelerate the car. The SH all-wheel drive system works very well to also reduce understeer. With the MDX being such a big SUV, you think that it can't go around corners as quickly as it actually can do. But at the apex of a corner, you can start to roll on the throttle quite aggressively. The SH all-wheel drive system will manage the power very well to curb understeer and get the MDX quickly out of the turn. The 2022 Acura MDX is equipped with standard adaptive dampers regardless of trim level. The dampers are very well tuned to provide a smooth and comfortable ride. Even when you switch the drive mode to Sport, the dampers are still soft enough to absorb big bumps without transferring the shunts into the cabin. Speaking of which, inside the cabin you will find lots of space for front occupants. At 6'4", I easily and comfortably found a good seating position. The second row seats have just enough legroom behind my driving position for someone of my height. Also, you can remove the center seat for a pass-through. Just be aware it can be pretty heavy for some. The third row, however, is to be only used by children. Legroom and headroom is extremely tight for an adult, even an average height adult. But getting into the back is super easy because there's a button at the bottom of the second row seat. Push it and the seat springs into its most forward position. Further behind the third row, the trunk has quite a bit of cargo capacity. 513 liters with all rows of seat up, 1,368 liters with the third row folded, and 2,690 liters with the second and third rows folded. There's also a pretty sizable compartment underneath the floor that will easily fit a backpack and camera equipment. As for the CX-9, the ride is not quite as plush as the one in the MDX. The Mazda is not available with adaptive dampers. However, driving over bumps or poorly maintained roads is not an uncomfortable driving experience. It's just not quite as comfortable as in the MDX. As for interior space, front occupants have plenty of headroom and legroom. This signature trim of the CX-9 receives captain's chairs for the second row, with lower trims having bench seating. These captain's chairs can recline and slide forwards and backwards, they are heated, and there's climate controls, sunshades, and a bit of storage in the center console between the seats. Pull on a tab on the second row seats and they slide forwards to allow access into the third row. On paper, the Mazda has a tiny bit more legroom in the third row than the Acura, but less headroom. However, like the MDX, these seats are meant for children, not adults. Behind the seats, the Mazda CX-9 has 407 liters with all rows up, 1,082 liters with the third row folded, and 2,017 liters with the second and third rows folded. All of these capacities are quite a bit less than the cargo volume of the Acura MDX. As you would expect, the Mazda CX-9 is the least expensive of the two. It starts at $40,550 Canadian and can go up to $52,550 Canadian for this top signature trim. The Acura MDX starts at $57,900 Canadian and can go up to $68,900 Canadian for this top Platinum Elite trim. For the money, both come very well equipped even in standard form. They both have heated seats, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration, 3-zone climate controls, adaptive cruise control, and a full suite of advanced driver and safety aids such as automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning with lane keep, and blind zone sensors. However, the MDX has more features such as a panoramic sunroof, wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, Amazon Alexa, driver knee airbags, full digital driver display, and power liftgate, all as standard. At the other end of the spectrum, both SUVs have a slew of similar premium features such as head-up displays, premium leather seating surfaces, hands-free power liftgates, rear sunshades, heated steering wheels, ventilated front seats, satellite navigation systems, and premium audio systems, to name a few. There isn't really much difference between the top spec trims apart from the price. One of the biggest changes to the 2021 Mazda CX-9, well 2021.5 here in Canada, is the new infotainment system. It is of course Mazda's latest infotainment operating system, and it is displayed on a 10.25 inch screen. It is not a touchscreen and is instead controlled by this rotary knob down here on the center console. Thing is though, while it's not a touchscreen, it's actually pretty easy to navigate because it was designed to work with this rotary knob. And it's not very cluttered down here on the center console because all you have is the knob, as well as back button, audio, home, navigation, and favorites button, as well as a volume knob. One thing to note though is that it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but not wireless like in the Acura MDX. However, because it's not a touchscreen, you have to use this rotary knob. And unfortunately, those systems were not designed to work with this knob. They were designed to work with touchscreens. So navigating through CarPlay or Android Auto can be a bit finicky with this knob. Just something to be aware of. The MDX also receives the latest infotainment system that Acura has developed, but just like the Mazda, it is not controlled by a touchscreen. So similar finicky controls for CarPlay and Android Auto. But the screen is larger at 12.3 inches and is controlled by a touchpad that Acura calls a true touchpad interface. What this means is that whichever position you touch on the pad correlates to that exact position on the screen. For example, touch the top right corner of the pad, the top right item on the screen gets highlighted. It takes quite a while to get used to this system as most other touchpads function like a laptop touchpad. But after some time with it, it starts to become muscle memory. One other pretty sizable difference between these two SUVs are their warranties. The 2022 Acura MDX has a 4-year, 80,000 kilometer new vehicle warranty, which is 1 year longer than the CX-9's basic new vehicle warranty. But the MDX also comes with a 5-year, 100,000 kilometer powertrain warranty. This powertrain warranty is 6 years or 70,000 miles in the United States. But the Mazda CX-9 has an ace up its sleeve, albeit for Canadian customers. It has a 3-year unlimited mileage basic and 5-year unlimited mileage powertrain warranty. Unfortunately, this is not available in the United States, and instead it gets a more normal 3-year 36,000 mile basic and 5-year 60,000 mile powertrain warranties. So back to the original question, is the Mazda CX-9 premium enough to take on an actual premium car? I think it is. But then, why is it so much cheaper? Well, it's not as fast as the MDX, it has a bit less cargo space, it has a smaller sunroof, it has a smaller infotainment screen, and so on. So all of these little things add up. But you know what? I could live with that because it genuinely feels like a premium product from behind the steering wheel. As for the MDX, it is a big improvement over the previous generation. Yes, you are paying more than the CX-9, but you are paying a lot less than the equivalently equipped German rival like the X5 or GLE. So depending on your budget, you have a couple of excellent choices with these two. If you want to know more about either of these vehicles, I wrote a more detailed comparison review of them over on my website. You can find the link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner on the top right. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.